Okay.
End stream.
Has Claire been wound up this week? I tell you, she was wound so tight Sunday morning, I thought she was gonna wear me out.
Claire, I mean,
And she'll come in that room and start running and jumping and twirling, and it's like, my word, she's got more energy.
Claire, I mean, it's funny. I mean, Claire is Claire. It's just,
But then you notice she got real quiet during Sunday school. She's just,
Yeah, she was, well, when we were singing, she's gotten where
Yeah,
she won't sing with
she
us.
puts her
She
head
puts her
down.
head down. and
Yeah.
She won't sing with us, and she used to.
What is
Is she being shy or?
you know, it's funny too, 'cause like, you know, with Claire, especially during lunch, when she's eating, she just, like, she's dreaming. She's got her eyes closed.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. I mean, and she didn't have to do
She's
much.
savoring her food.
Well, I mean, she's just, we had one time, I had a video of it. She just eats it and then you just see her head just start.
Oh, is she starting to get tired?
That's what TJ does too.
Eat with snacks, huh? I've never had that moment. I've fallen asleep, I think, with the TV on before. But no, I don't. Man, but.
That's the best sleep you can get. Turn that TV on and just pass out.
Now, my father would agree. I don't know if mom's watching, but dad, I tell you, he put on Avatar 100 days in a row. That's his napping movie. And he put on Aquaman and did the exact same thing 100 days in a row. Turn it on 20 minutes in, and he just goes.
It's all
So,
the same 20 minutes every time. Huh?
yeah, you know, I don't know if he fast forwards it or whatever. I don't know. I tell you, I can't sleep during a movie. I will turn it off. And I won't, if I ever pay for a ticket, like, I'm not going to get up and walk out. I mean, unless it's just something I was clearly not expecting.
Depends on how good the popcorn is.
I miss Regal Theater.
I'm telling
And
you.
a Pepsi.
I miss
I don't have
Regal.
big Pepsi.
Root beer.
I thought it was supposed to open today.
I don't
That one I
know.
read.
Tell 'em.
Well, I'm excited for Godzilla versus King Kong. I don't know about you all, but as a fan of the 80s and 90s, man,
Godzilla can't hold a
he
candle.
was my hero. I was a big
You know
Godzilla
what?
fan.
Godzilla can't beat King Kong. King Kong has opposable thumbs.
Well, Godzilla's king of the monsters. So I have not seen that, and I'm trying to debate if I want to get HBO Max for a month for $15 a month, or $15 for one movie at the theater. You know, it's the debate I'm having right now. But no, that was one of my childhood heroes growing up. I was a big Godzilla fan. So the Regal Theater, they have Cheeto popcorn. So good. It's Cheetos and then Cheeto dust with popcorn. It's all mixed up, and it's warm. So good. It's amazing.
You get popcorn that's got that.
Yeah, you can now. You can, and I've done that. I bought their Cheeto popcorn and a bag of Cheetos, and of course the kids want them all. Just put them together. Yeah.
Prefer milk duds and popcorn.
Milk duds? I don't do the candy.
And popcorn.
Oh, and popcorn.
In it. No, you put it in it.
That's movie treats.
Yeah, you cook your popcorn and then dump your milk duds in there.
Oh, whoa. That I've never heard. You know, and I never heard of peanuts in Coca-Cola. It wasn't until I saw Dad do it. He just, has a cup.
Oh, yeah.
Coca-Cola, he's got peanuts in there. And I was like, I've never heard of that. It's amazing too. It just, the things you grow up with, food trends a long time ago, like Caro syrup. white Karo syrup, right? Good stuff. Get a big old thing of butter, Karo syrup, whip it up, put it on some bumpy biscuits. That was great stuff. And then later in life, you find out that high fructose syrup is really, really bad for you, and it shouldn't have been consumed at all. But it's so good. It's bumpy biscuits, basically Bisquick, and they're like in a casserole pan, and they're just lumps, right? Just lumps. That's all they are. So, I always grew up angel food cake you eat with peanut butter. That's just what they did, and that's what I learned to do myself. Karo syrup and butter. Oh man, whip that up. Some good stuff. Better than honey, let me tell you. Better than honey. We're in Genesis 6. Genesis 6. It smells so good. Doesn't taste as good. It smells good though. Then you drink it, you're like kind of bland water, but it smells good as you're drinking it. That's usually how that works. But anyway, just so y'all know, after today, for the next 3 Wednesdays, Jackie's going to do some teaching. Have you figured out? You nailed it down? Zeroed in?
We'll have something. I'm getting there.
Okay. So this is my last 3 weeks. I have 3 weeks left of school. And so I'm trying to finish up some things. I got a paper to finish, to start and finish. Ooh, that sounded bad, didn't it? So I'm just trying to end strong, and that concludes April 22nd. So, but Jackie's going to take these next few Wednesdays. But anyways, all right. Any other questions or announcements before we begin? Nothing. Everything's good on the home front. Well, I hope you guys are excited for Easter. All right, Genesis 6. We get to the destruction of the world. Chapter 6, starting in verse 1. When mankind began to multiply on the earth and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of mankind were beautiful, and they took any they chose as wives for themselves. And the Lord said, "My spirit will not remain with mankind forever, because they are corrupt. Their days will be 120 years." The Nephilim were on the earth both in those days and afterward. When the sons of God came to the daughters of mankind who bore children to them, they were the powerful men of old, the famous men. So, what's the setting? Question is always, who are the sons of God, right? That's always the big question. And there's been lots of debates about it. Some would say they're angels that have come down, saw women were beautiful, took them as brides, right?
That's what some have said.
But in the New Testament, Jesus points out that there is no ability to procreate. Like you will not be given in marriage. There is no sex in heaven. That does kind of limit a little bit the role of sex here on earth. It is a major component in procreation, but in heaven, there is no procreation. You will not be given in marriage. And so that becomes part of, when you add the New Testament into this context, it becomes a matter of, are these really angels of some sort?
What does it mean when it talks about these are the powerful men of old, the famous men?
The famous men. I mean, that's a great question. I mean, it's been viewed of as powerful kings of the earth. I mean, the earth is you would say is full at this point, or populated. It's growing. I mean, powerful men who have domination.
You're talking about physically powerful, mentally powerful. So I don't think it gives us enough to go on.
It doesn't give us a lot, right? I mean, Moses is very, in some cases, specific, but in some cases, vague. But where they came from, I mean, we're not given just a very clear picture. Yes, these are angels that have procreated with women and have created this mixed DNA of race. You know, I mean, it's hard to say. But we do know this, that because of this, you have in verse 3, and the Lord said, my spirit will not remain with mankind forever because they are corrupt. Whoever these men are, wherever they came from, they were not good. But instead that they led just the life of rebellion and destruction.
Well, let me ask you this. Satan and his demons were at one time angels, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So that also means that even in hell, there's no sex,
I would say so.
correct?
I would think so. By logic, I would say yeah.
There's a lot of evil people that are going to be really upset.
Yeah.
I think they'll be thinking about that.
And
They think people.
from a heavens perspective, I love the fact, when Jesus puts everything in proper perspective. I mean, when I die and, Michelle dies, Lord willing, we stay married for 80 years, but when we go up to heaven, we're not going to rekindle back our marriage. We're going to be so focused on Jesus. We're just going to be like, hi, Michelle, how's it going? And then because Jesus is going to consume your thoughts. You will not see your soulmate. You're going to see Jesus. And he will dominate your amazement and your attention fully. There will not be coming back to a family. Because that's what they were trying to get Jesus on, right? She married 7 men, back to back to back to back to back. Who's she going to live with when she gets to heaven? And Jesus says, you got it all wrong on what's going to be in heaven. And that poses some problem even for Mormons, because they believe family is here and in the next planet. I want to say. Because eventually you become little gods and things like that. So, but we're
Then
not.
the mansions, that's an earthly thing, because you're not going to need a mansion. Why does Christ talk about in his Father's house there are many mansions?
I have no idea.
Well, we look to you for these things.
Well, I mean, unless the text says it's speculation at that point. I mean,
But I mean, why would we need any mansion?
you won't need any lamps.
No.
How about that one? I guess.
God is the light of everything.
So, I
We don't need
mean,
a sun, we don't need a moon.
what will we be doing on a day to, if you want to call it a day to day, because the idea of a day is even changed, right? There is no night. So I don't know. I mean, Jesus just kind of gives us a little answer about family in heaven, and there's really not one. We're all one family.
Oh, I agree with that.
But I mean, going back to Genesis 6 here, that's what's always the contradiction is when you add the New Testament that angels don't procreate. How do you fix that in here? So I don't know. These seem to be very intense, strong men of domination, and they took what they wanted. They took what they wanted. The Lord has a problem with just who they are in their hearts. We're going to read more about that here in verse 5. But then we finally get the number there in verse 3. Their days will be 120 years. And from this point on, you're going to start seeing the age numbers go from 900, 800, 700. And it's going to drop and just get further and further and further. Because here the Lord's Spirit is not in them. Which, that's a big deal. If you're reading from Genesis 1 to now, God breathed in his Spirit, things that make you move, make you come alive. And God says, I'm not bringing my Spirit anymore. It's a big thing. So Moses is explaining why we die younger now than Adam and Eve and all them from now on. Let's look at the Lord's perspective in verse 5. When the Lord saw that human wickedness was widespread on the earth, and that every inclination of the human mind was nothing but evil all the time, the Lord regretted that he had made man on the earth, and he was deeply grieved. Then the Lord said, I will wipe mankind, whom I created off the face of the earth, together with the animals, creatures that crawl, and birds of the sky, for I regret that I made them. Noah, however, found favor with the Lord. What do you feel about, we're getting a picture of human emotion attached to God, don't we? It's an odd thing.
Well, he gave it to us. Why wouldn't he have something?
I mean, this idea that God regrets, we would all say that he's foreknowing. He knows everything. He knows his creation. He knows what they're capable of. He knows all the choices they're going to make. In some ways, if I were to give Hannah pizza or carrots, I know exactly what she's going to pick. And you give Claire pizza and strawberries, she's going to pick strawberries. Or Chick-fil-A nuggets and strawberries, she's still picking strawberries. But Lord knows everything, but yet he says that he regretted that he had made man on the earth and was deeply grieved. What do you think he's saying here?
He's probably thinking, oh my gosh, what have I done?
What have I done? Is he burning anger or is he grieving?
Grieving. No problem.
Is there a difference between those two words? Like, what's the tone between the two? Hot, anger, or grieving? What would you say?
Grieving, disappointed,
Yeah.
sad, hurt.
Sorrowful, probably sorry he didn't go ahead and kill the Satan instead of just casting him out.
Sorrow.
How else can you put it?
That's a good one. I remember Randy asks me that question, if to be angry, it's not right to just be hot at someone. Does Jesus approve of that? But would Jesus approve of grieving? Being sad?
Christ showed anger too.
He did. To a particular group.
Yeah, but he still showed anger.
He did. And I'm not disagreeing with that.
So
But-
you can't say that specifically that, well, even God talks about being angry. The
He
Bible
does.
talks about him being angry.
Proverbs talks all about the dangers of angry in the mouth.
Yeah.
All over Proverbs, and James too. But yes, Jesus hates hypocrisy. There's no question about it.
Oh, yeah.
These Pharisees,
One thing you're thinking of it.
they're claiming to be servants of the Lord when they were servants of themselves, and Jesus let out his anger.
Yeah.
It's just something thinking Proverbs and James. Anger is a very dangerous road to take to keep going with the will of God, to say the right things and to do the right things. So we look to Jesus as the example, but at the same time, we still need to be careful. But God grieved here. It saddened him. And he, from that grieving, he decided to wipe mankind, whom I created off the face of the earth, together with the animals, creatures that crawl, and birds of the sky. Now, why include animals, you think? Why include the birds, the animals? Can't really say fish.
All the water down there, they didn't have much choice.
Yeah,
They can't swim that long.
Well, God could have done it another way. He could have just withheld the breath of life and everything would perish.
Could have plagued them.
Yeah.
You could have done so many things right.
Give him cold.
But think about when we talked about why were the animals created in the first place? Why was plants created in the first place? For man. They exist for man. You are to use the animals and the plants and the birds of the sky and whatever for yourself. Again, use doesn't mean abuse. There's a big difference between the two. So if you're going to take out man, you're basically taking out all the underlings that support man, right? All the things that support man, you're also going to take with you. So, God was wiping off, basically reversing day 6 is what he's trying to do, or what he, wants to do. But then, of course, you get, in verse 8, Noah, however, found favor with the Lord. So, We're going to start over on the population of the world, right? You get there in verse, 5? Human wickedness was widespread on the earth, and that every inclination of the human mind was nothing but evil all the time. Every thought that comes into your brain opposes God. That is what the Lord is saying here. Except for Noah. So he's going to start the population over, right? He made Adam and Eve. They had children. They all had children. Seth had children. Lamech had children. Cain had children. They all had their children. You know, you would think everything would start out right, and instead the world just gets corrupted. But what if I take a righteous man? I take a righteous man and start over with a righteous man. Is that going to produce righteous offspring?
Not necessarily.
No, that's not what's going to happen. But Noah is found favorite. So verse 9. These are the family records of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, blameless among his contemporaries. Noah walked with God. That's a special phrase, especially early on. Who else walked with God? And? Well, Enoch.
Oh, Enoch. Yeah.
Right? Enoch walked with God, and he what? Never saw death, right? Something to take note. You walk with God, you get life. When you don't, you die. Verse 10, and Noah fathered 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight, and the earth was filled with wickedness. God saw how corrupt the earth was, for every creature had corrupted its way on the earth. Then God said to Noah, I have decided to put an end to every creature, for the earth is filled with wickedness because of them. Therefore, I am going to destroy them along with the earth. Make yourself an ark of gopher wood. Make rooms in the ark and cover it with pitch inside and outside. This is how you are to make it. The ark will be 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, and 45 feet high. Now we're going to read some of these measurements. And I am all in favor of the feet over the cubit. I'm okay with that little extra interpretive translation because it sure does help me. Doesn't it help you? You start reading cubits, what's a cubit? But I'm okay with the feet. You are to make a roof, finishing the sides of the ark to within 18 inches of the roof. You are to put a door in the side of the ark, make it with lower, middle, and upper decks. Understand that I am bringing a flood waters on the earth to destroy every creature under heaven with the breath of life in it. Everything on earth will perish, but I will establish my covenant with you, and you will enter the ark with your sons, your wife, and your sons' wives. You are also to bring into the ark 2 of all the living creatures, male and female, to keep them alive with you. 2 of everything, from the birds according to their kinds, from the livestock according to their kinds, and from the animals that crawl on the ground according to their kinds, will come to you so that you can keep them alive. Take with you every kind of food that is eaten, gather it as food for you and for them. And Noah did this. He did everything that God had commanded him. So now he tells how he's going to do it. This is the first time he says how he's going to do it. He's going to bring the flood waters, right? Very similar to the creation account, isn't it? What do you get on the creation account? You get a blob in the sky, up in the universe. First thing, it's dark, it's black, it's darkness, and then water, and then land. And God starts dividing between the 2, right? Darkness become light, spread the waters, and then finally the land forms. And now God's going to reverse that action, and it's going to wipe out everything that he made. So God is doing a reversal on the creation, making the world uninhabitable, unlivable. Any questions so far? Chapter 7. Then the Lord said to Noah, enter the ark, you and all your household, for I have seen that you alone are righteous before me in this generation. You are to take with you 7 pairs, a male and his female of all the clean animals, and 2 of the animals that are not clean, a male and its female, and 7 pairs, male and female of the birds of the sky, in order to keep offspring alive throughout the earth. 7 days from now, I will make it rain on the earth 40 days and 40 nights. every living thing I have made, I will wipe off the face of the earth. And Noah did everything that the Lord had commanded him. Noah was 600 years old when the flood came, and water covered the earth. So Noah, his sons, his wife, and his sons' wives entered the ark because of the flood waters. From the clean animals, unclean animals, birds, and every creature that crawls on the ground, 2 of each, male and female, came to Noah and entered the ark, just as God had commanded him. 7 days later, the flood waters came on the earth. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month of the 17th day of the month, on that day, all the sources of the vast watery depths burst open. The floodgates of the sky were opened, and the rain fell on the earth 40 days and 40 nights. On that same day, Noah, along with his sons Shem, Ham, and Japheth, Noah's wife and his 3 sons' wives, entered the ark with him. They entered it with all the wildlife according to their kinds, all livestock according to their kinds, all the creatures that crawl on the earth according to their kinds, every flying creature, all the birds and every winged creature according to their kinds. 2 of every creature that has breath of life in it came to Noah and entered the ark. Those that entered, male and female of every creature, entered just as God had commanded him. Then the Lord shut him in. And I love that last line. It was not Noah says, help me with this giant door. No, it says the Lord was the one that closed it in. The flood continued for 40 days on the earth. The water increased, lifted up the ark so that it rose above the earth. The water surged and increased greatly on the earth, and the ark floated on the surface of the water. Then the water surged even higher on the earth, and all the high mountains under the whole sky were covered. The mountains were covered as the water surged above them more than 20 feet. Every creature perished, those that crawl on the earth, birds, livestock, wildlife, and those that swarm on the earth, as well as all mankind. Everything with the breath of the Spirit of life in its nostrils. Everything on dry land died. He wiped out every living thing that was on the face of the earth, from mankind to livestock to creatures that crawl to the birds of the sky, and they were wiped off the earth. Only Noah was left, and those that were with him in the ark, and the water surged on the earth 150 days. You ever try to just imagine that day? The water, you can imagine from their perspective, what's falling from the sky? They had never experienced rain before. And then all of a sudden it happens and just keeps going and just keeps going. And when you think about it, being on that boat, in the New Testament, they called Noah a preacher of righteousness. Noah did mingle with people. They did know he was building something. And then here you go building a giant boat, and everyone's pounding on your door screaming. And you just kept going. The wrath of God. And he took everything. From the old to the infants, he took them all. But such is. So, Lord's going to start over. Verse 8, chapter 8, excuse me. God remembered Noah, as well as all the wildlife and all the livestock that were with him in the ark. God caused a wind to pass over the earth, and the water began to subside. The sources of the watery depths and the floodgates of the sky were closed, and rain from the sky stopped. The water steadily receded from the earth, and by the end of 150 days, the water had decreased significantly. The ark came to rest in the 7th month on the 17th day of the month on the mountains of Ararat. The water continued to recede until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the 1st day of the month, the tops of the mountains were visible. After 40 days, Noah opened the window of the ark that he had made, and he sent out a raven. It went back and forth until the water had dried up from the earth. Then he sent out a dove to see whether the water on the earth's surface had calmed down. But the dove found no resting place for its foot. It returned to him in the ark because water covered the surface of the whole earth. He reached out and brought it into the ark himself. So Noah waited 7 more days, sent out the dove from the ark again. When the dove came to him at evening, there was a plucked olive leaf in the beak. So Noah knew that the water on the earth's surface had gone down. After he had waited another 7 days, he sent out the dove, but it did not return to him again. In the 601st year, in the 1st month, on the 1st day of the month, the water then had covered the earth was dried up. Then Noah removed the ark's cover and saw that the surface of the ground was drying. By the 27th day of the 2nd month, the earth was dry. So, you have a choice. You can tell Moses is just thinking right now, just Israel, you have a choice. If you walk with God, and as you saw Noah over and over again, you saw that line, and he did what God commanded him, right? You saw that line 3 or 4 times, and he did what God commanded him. And what happened? Noah lived. If you walk with the Lord, which means you're walking in peace, you're walking in obedience to the Lord, Moses says this, you will live. But if you disobey, if you choose to walk away, you will die. And just like we read last Wednesday in Deuteronomy 30, he presents this to Israel. You know, you either choose life and blessing or you choose cursing and death. It is your choice to make. And I love that, just that whole aspect of just, it is your responsibility to make that right choice. And you either believe it or you don't. Either you believe God decides life and death or you don't. Either you believe God can judge you or God can save you or you don't. And that's going to impact your behavior, just like Moses is trying to get here. It will change your behavior if you believe this. That's why faith is always priority 1. Behavior follows. Any thoughts so far on the Noah account? Let's look at the promises of God. Verse 15, chapter 8. Then God spoke to Noah, come out of the ark, you, your wife, your sons, and your sons' wives with you. Bring out all the living creatures that are with you, birds, livestock, those that crawl on the earth, and they will spread over the earth and be fruitful and multiply on the earth. So Noah, along with his sons, his wife, and his son's wife came out. All the animals, all the creatures that crawl, and all the flying creatures, everything that moves on the earth came out of the ark by their families. Then Noah built an altar to the Lord. He took some of every kind of clean animal and every kind of clean bird and offered burnt offerings on the altar. Talk about the most expensive offering you could ever give. There's only 6, 7 birds. Maybe they've doubled at that point, but to even offer one would just seem to be such a high value. But he did it. But it pleased the Lord in verse 21, when the Lord smelled the pleasing aroma, he said to himself, I will never again curse the ground because of human beings, even though the inclination of the human heart is evil from youth onward, and I will never again strike down every living thing as I have done. As long as the earth endures, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, and day and night will not cease. So 21, yeah, he reemphasizes that I will never again curse the ground. Going back to that idea of curse, which brings suffering and death. God says, I will not do that to humanity again. As a whole, anyways. As a whole. Let's get to the covenant. Chapter 9. God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth. The fear and terror of you will be in every living creature on the earth, every bird of the sky, every creature that crawls on the ground, and all the fish of the sea. They are placed under your authority. Every creature that lives and moves will be food for you. As I gave the green plants, I have given you everything. However, you must not eat meat with its lifeblood in it, and I will require a penalty for your lifeblood. I will require it from any animal and from any human. If someone murders a fellow human, I will require that person's life. Whoever sheds human blood, by humans his blood will be shed, for God made humans in his image. But you, be fruitful and multiply, spread out over the earth and multiply on it. So, capital punishment. Capital punishment. Why do you think it was instituted here after the flood and not during Adam and Eve, Cain? Why did God now basically create and institute capital punishment? Something tells me that that was a major problem before the flood.
Part of the evil of man is taking the life of other men.
I mean, it was powerful people. As you know, as we read through the law, what does God feel about widows and orphans?
You're to take care of it.
Take care of it. God hates it when there's bribery. He hates it when the poor are treated poorly in the courts. He hates all injustice. And so I think there we get this picture that before the flood, the sons of God, whoever they are exactly, dominated people. They saw women, they took it for themselves at any cost. And just cruelty. And just cruel people being mean to others. And we see that today. There are just people that just want to hurt people. They just want to hurt people. From the things that we saw at the grocery store, from the things you saw in Atlanta, and just from churches that are just getting picked. I mean, they still never found a motive for the shooter in Vegas. Remember that when that happened? It was at a country concert. They never found a motive on why he did that. There are just people that just want to hurt people because they can. That's just the human heart. So that exists, and God says if that happens, that person's life will be required. So how can the Catholic Church say that, the death penalty is not in God's will? I do not know how they come up with that. I have no idea. So you can look at this as two ways. Look how God just gets angry and he brings judgment on people, or you could say this is how much God values life. He values life. You're made in his image, and if you take it, then yours will be taken. So those are the two ways you can kind of, whatever angle you want at it.
Well, the more severe the punishment, technically, then the more a person should think before they react on something.
So as a
And I think
deterrent,
that's what this was, yeah.
I would say,
I think that's what this is.
I mean, honestly, coming from what happened to now, I mean, that's yes, don't do this. I mean, I would say it's definitely an encouraging, warning behavior to not do so. And we also get from the beginning, do not eat blood. Verse 4. Do not drink or eat blood. I mean, that is where, as I said last Sunday, this is where they believe life comes, is what carries, is blood. So you are to put it on the ground. You are not to ingest another life. Lord finds that unclean. So then he tells them in verse 7, but you be fruitful, multiply, spread out over the earth, and multiply on it. Then God said to Noah, verse 8, and his sons with him, understand that I am establishing my covenant with you and your descendants after you, and with every living creature that is with you, birds and livestock and all wildlife of the earth that are with you, all the animals of the earth that came out of the ark. I establish my covenant with you that never again will every creature be wiped out by flood waters. There will never again be a flood to destroy the earth. So here's a thought, question. He says, I am making a covenant with you and your descendants after you. So who are the descendants? Is that everybody? Or is that just Israel?
No, well, I don't know. You throw Israel in there.
I mean, you can easily make the case everybody, right? I mean, just one family. That's all that's on the earth. One family, you and your descendants after you. Now he says, be fruitful and multiply. Was that just for, I mean, this is the thing. Is that just for Noah and his family, or is that for everybody? What do you think? This is what they go to. The whole families of 30s. Be fruitful and multiply. It's not an easy answer, but it's one that they go to. This is one that, the Duggar family, the others go to. But, they also had a little bit more reason. Mortality rate for infants was a lot higher, obviously, than it is today. But nevertheless, that's a question we always had to ask is, does God want me and Michelle to be fruitful and multiply? It's a question every couple has to try to answer. So, but that's not to say I think that knowledge of the body, the human body, the risks involved, I do not think those are curses. I think God gives you the more knowledge you have of the female body and the male body to make choices. I was talking to a lady last night when I was with the girls at the park. There's a family in their church that has 9 children, and 7 are autistic. Just follows the genes, I guess. And just hearing that thought, you just have a lot of questions, right? There's a bunch of questions you'd have to ask, but I'm not them. You do what's right before the Lord. So he makes a covenant with Noah, tells him to be fruitful and multiply. Now, let's keep going with the covenant, verse 12. And God said, "This is the sign of the covenant I am making between me and you and every living creature with you, a covenant for all future generations. I have placed my bow in the clouds, and it will be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. Whenever I form clouds over the earth and a bow appears in the clouds, I will remember my covenant between me and you and all the living creatures. Water will never again become a flood to destroy every creature. The bow will be in the clouds, and I will look at it and remember the permanent covenant between God and all the living creatures on the earth." God said to Noah, "This is the sign of the covenant that I have established between me and every creature on earth." And you're right, they probably have never seen a rainbow. Right? If it never rained, they have to be limited to waterfalls, whatever that may be, even in that area. Who knows? But they've never seen a rainbow. And this time, we look at a rainbow, it carries such a shameful sign, doesn't it? I mean, there is a group that has declared the rainbow their sign and their symbol. And it's so sad because God made that. And if you think about what is a bow, it is a weapon in the sky, right? I mean, it is a military weapon in the sky that God has put for people to see. Now, granted, the bow is down. It's not aiming at anybody, but it's a sign of peace between God and earth that he will not do that again. It's supposed to be a peaceful sign. So I don't care what anybody says. They do not have ownership of the rainbow. If I wear a rainbow on my t-shirt, it's because God made the rainbow. There's nothing wrong with rainbows. Not to say I have any rainbow t-shirts, but I'm just saying that is God's ownership. Okay? So, a covenant between Noah and the earth as well. Noah and the Lord, as well as a covenant between God and all of creatures. Let's get to the end of Noah. I'm trying to finish his arc here. Verse 18. Noah's sons who came out of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham was the father of Canaan. These 3 were Noah's sons, and from them the whole earth was populated. Noah, as a man of the soil, began by planting a vineyard. He drank some of the wine, became drunk, and uncovered himself inside his tent. Ham, the father of Canaan, saw his father naked and told his 2 brothers outside. Then Shem and Japheth took a cloak, placed it over both their shoulders, and walking backward, they covered their father's nakedness. Their faces were turned away, and they did not see their father naked. When Noah woke from his drinking and learned that what his youngest son had done to him, he said, "Canaan is cursed. He will be the lowest of slaves to his brothers." He also said, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem. Let Canaan be Shem's slave. Let God extend Japheth. Let Japheth dwell in the tent of Shem. Let Canaan be Shem's slave." Now, Noah lived 350 years after the flood, so Noah's life lasted 950 years. Then he died. So Noah was doing all good, right? Hundreds and hundreds of years, it seems like Noah was doing the right thing. But then what? He became drunk. Obviously, the Lord does not give us a very good picture here of Noah's ending or of his final time. It says he became drunk and he was naked. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw his nakedness. And then he wanted to go get the 2 boys, the 2 older brothers. What do you think was Ham's heart here? Embarrass his father? Dominion over his father? I mean, there is an interpretation out there that when he saw him naked, that they interpret that Ham raped Noah. Now, I don't know if I can go that far with it. I find that it's not there. But some they try to find euphemisms all over the place. To know someone can also mean a sexual encounter. So I don't know if I go that far. But something about Ham, that he saw his father naked, and then he told his two brothers outside, hey, come look and see our father's shame, embarrassment. But the boys did not. Now, what do you think Moses is saying about Ham? Ham is the father of who? Canaan. And what is the prophecy he makes about Canaan? Let Canaan be Shem's slave. Now, generation, through Shem, we get Abraham. And through Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the 12 tribes of Judah, 12 tribes of Jacob, and all of them. They're going to the land of Canaan. I mean, God has already predicted here that they are going to be your slaves because of here. What do you think about that? Your great, whatever, father's choice has set the path for you. What do you think? It's not the only time. In Exodus 34, generation curses, that the curse will follow to the third and fourth generation. I mean, this isn't the first time we see this here. That your great whatever choice impacted your life. Oh, come on, will we see that today? Do we not? Do we not see that today?
We still have a choice.
Yes, you do. By the grace of God, can that chain or curse can be broken? Absolutely. I mean, there are families that have come from atrocious backgrounds, but yet by the Spirit of God, it changes. The next seed or the grandchild becomes a believer and a follower, and then finally we get a blessing following that family rather than curses. Absolutely. But man, it's so sad to see little children, and you see just a family who hates God, hates his ways, want nothing to do with his people, wants to be their own king and queen of their life. And that's where the child's growing up under.
It makes it harder for that child.
Absolutely it does. And and that's so difficult. I know it's a tough conversation, but we see it here. It's biblical that it's generational curses is very possible, and it happens a lot. I remember in Kansas, man, we had one mother. She had she was in her 70s at the time, or she was 70s when I met her. She married an abusive man, just a horrible, godless man, according to her and her daughter. And then her daughter, same thing. Her daughter, she ended up being a great grandmother at the age of 50. Just kind of give you a picture there. Again, married a married abusive man. And then her daughter had 7 kids. And we had one of them at our church. And then that daughter got pregnant, at 15, and just going down the line. You think you would learn from your great grandmother's choice, but it just follows the same pattern. It just follows the pattern. And the only thing I know that could change anyone is the gospel. I just don't know what else. Other than removing that child and putting them into a brand new home, I don't know what else you can do. I just don't. But only a gospel can change a curse of suffering and bad choices to life in Jesus. I just don't know what else. So you look at that. Does that seem fair or unfair? Doesn't matter what you may see it. It's what happens. It's just the way it is. People make choices. It impacts your children. It impacts your grandchildren, and so forth and so forth and so forth. When we give birth, is it our desire that our children be raised to be a godly seed or a dead seed? Because it is so much harder to pull them to, once they go down that path, it's so much harder to change the direction. It's so hard. But here it is, the warning to us parents right here, as it is in Exodus chapter 34. It is 8:00. Oops. Although if I go by that one in there, it's 7:45. They just need new batteries. It's just so funny.